Hello everyone, welcome, welcome. We'll give everyone a few seconds to load in. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're here with Premier Yarns and Michaels. And today we will be learning how to make a silver leaf shawl with Tori, our wonderful host. Okay, making sure everyone's getting in already. And please, everyone, remember this class is being recorded and it will be made available to watch again on michaels.com/classes. Should be uploaded by Monday. And I will be periodically dropping in the pattern into the chat box. And make sure if you have any questions for Tori, you can type them in the chat box and I'll do my best to try to answer as many as I possibly can. This class is 45 minutes long. And please be aware we have other classes still going on today. So if you have more time today, we'd love to have you join in with those too. Alrighty, Tori, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
All right. Thanks so much, Maddie. And thanks to Michaels for hosting this fun day of I Love Yarn classes. I'm Tori Gerbis. I am the creative manager here at Premier Yarns. And today we are going to make our silver leaf shawl using our cotton fair yarn. And this yarn is a really great all-season yarn. It is a cotton acrylic blend, so it's a little more forgiving than 100% cotton yarns. It's a little easier on the hands, but it creates a really nice weight and a really comfortable piece to wear in all weather. So it's great for summer and spring, and you can also then bring them in as layering pieces for your fall and winter wardrobe, which we're in North Carolina, so we're just starting to cool down here, but especially for those of you in cooler climates that are really starting to bundle up, this is going to be a great piece that you're going to be able to wear year round. And if you should have the pattern, which Maddie will be putting in the comments, or that you can download from the sign up page on Michaels. And now this is a chart only pattern, and that means the entire stitch pattern is given in chart form, but I'm going to go over with you today how to read a chart. And this one is great because it is a repeatable pattern. So that means once you get past your initial setup pattern, you can keep working the repeats as many times as you want. So you can kind of cater it to how much yarn you have or how large or small of a piece that you want. You can make it really large and like really wrap yourself up. And I know people love really nice large shawls to use, give as prayer shawls. Or sometimes you just want like a little small kerchief type thing that you can just kind of have peeking out from your jacket, or as like an accessory that, just adds a little pizzazz to your outfit. So if you want to go ahead and put this over to my hands so I can show you guys. Perfect. What we've got, so I've got the pattern, and I've also got the chart slightly enlarged from the pattern, just so hopefully it'll show up a little bit better for you on camera. But as Maddie said, this is being recorded. You can always come back to it if you have any questions, if you need to kind of slow it down a bit, and you can always pop some questions in and I'll be happy to answer them. But first we're going to go over what we'll need. And for this pattern, you're going to need 3 balls of cotton fair. Now we use silver, hence the silver leaf shawl name for the pattern, but you can use, of course, any color you want. I've got this one is, my favorite, the bright peach. It's just gorgeous, but that one I just popped in because I love how it looks with the gray, but any color that you want. You're also going to need a tapestry or yarn needle, and this is going to be for weaving in your ends, and you're also going to be able to use this for blocking. If you want to do a harder block on your shawl, I'll also cover a couple different methods that you can use for that, but you can use some additional yarn, any smooth yarn will do, to help stretch out your shawl, and that really opens up the lace so you can see all those yarn overs, and that creates this fun pattern on here for you. And then you're also going to need size 8 5mm circular knitting needles. And the reason we recommend circular knitting needles for this pattern, it's not knit in the round, it is knit flat, so you're knitting back and forth in rows, but the circular needles allow your stitches to spread out, basically, just like if you were making any other large project, like if you were making an Afghan, or even working like a scarf or a wrap horizontally. When you have, you know, this long, of course, this one has a clear cable, so it's a little harder to see, but that allows all those stitches to spread out so they're not crammed on straight needles. You don't have to worry about them popping off or possibly, you know, dropping any stitches. And a couple optional things that are not needed, but nice to have. A block of Post-it notes. I recommend using these, so I'll show you just real quick. When you've got a chart, especially if you're newer to reading charts, sometimes it's nice to just, you know, take your Post-it note and put it right under the row you're working. And so then as you go along, you can just keep repositioning it up. So you can keep track of what row you're on, especially if, you know, you're like me, I've got a toddler, I put my knitting down and, you know, completely forget where I left off. So having that Post-it note there on that pattern, you know, helps you when you come back, you're like, okay, I was on row 3, I know where I am. You don't have to, you know, kind of struggle to figure out what exactly you were doing. And also, since this pattern does have, you could see, this is our chart A, the setup chart, they each have, you know, 3 distinct sections. You've got each half of your triangle. Let me see if I can move this over so I can actually show you the shawl, because this starts from the top down. So we are working basically from the center neck out and down. So it both grows vertically and horizontally. So you can use, I recommend 4 stitch markers if you are going to use stitch markers on this pattern, because that'll help you also, in addition to using Post-it notes, this is another way you can kind of keep track of your sections, where you're going to be placing your increases, and all that. So, all right, now that we've got those basics out of the way for our supplies, and of course now my shawl's not pretty and laid out anymore, but that is okay. We're going to go right to the beginning, and I'm going to cast on with you and show you where to place those markers, and also how we're going to read that chart. So as you can see in the pattern, you know, it tells you, you do have some written instructions, but they're basically just telling you how many repeats of the chart you're working, how many stitches you need to start with. So for this pattern, we are going to cast on 19 stitches. Now, I prefer long tail cast on, and that is just personal preference. It is one of those kind of all-purpose cast-ons that works well for most projects. It's not too firm, it's not too stretchy, it's nice to keep an even tension with. So it always starts with a slip knot, and then that's our first stitch. So then I'm going to cast on 18 more. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, oops, let me, where's that guy? Now, of course, I lost count because 17, 18, and 19. So once we have that ready to go, and at this point, you're just gonna leave your long tail for later.
We had one question in chat. How long of a tail do you usually leave?
Honestly, that is one of those things where as the longer you do it, you'll be able to get a little bit of a better practice with it. Usually how I measure, I pull out about the length from the tips of my fingers to the crease of my elbow right here will usually get me about 30 stitches cast on in most yarns. So that's how I measure out. So like for this, I'll almost always, that's the amount I'll do. I'll pull a tail from the tips of my fingers to right here where my elbow bends. And then like this, you're always gonna be better off having a little bit more of a tail left over than getting to the last few stitches and having like an inch of yarn trying to cast those stitches on. So you're always better to go a little bit longer than too short. So I hope that helps.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah. So now we are ready to work our first row. Now, when reading charts on right side rows, and on this pattern, the right side rows are odd numbered. And this is another helpful thing, but right side rows always go from right to left, and wrong side rows always go from left to right. And that's also, you'll notice how they're numbered. So you're always going to start where the numbers are for the row you're on. And then on this row, I'm going to show you where we would put our markers to help keep track, because you can see, if you're not familiar with charts, these gray boxes are no stitches. So that means at this point, we don't have anything to work there. So we just ignore them. You just pretend they aren't there. And as you can see, as we add the yarn overs, we get more stitches. They're basically just placeholders. So we'll know that there are going to be stitches there at a later point. So for row 1, I'm going to knit 3. So those are edge stitches or border stitches. And then, you know, for me to help keep track, especially, it's always hard for me to talk, look at the camera, and, you know, keep track of what I'm doing. So this always helps me, you know, stay on track. So I'll place the marker, as you can see in your pattern. So that's those 3 stitches. Then I'm going to place a marker. Then I'm going to purl 1 because I've got this dot. So this means, you know, you do have the key on the pages where it'll tell you if you're knitting, purling, and all the other stitches. So I'm going to move the yarn to the front, purl that stitch, and I'm going to place another marker because this section at this point only has that 1 stitch. And then I'm going to continue to work our center panel. And this is what forms this nice row of leaves here right down the center of the shawl. And another thing that's helpful when keeping track of this shawl, each section is differentiated by a reverse stockinette. So that's going to be these row of purl stitches right here. It's going to be purl on the right side and then knit on the wrong side. But at this point, so this is how, when we're doing this, we had 1 purl there. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And sometimes when you're newer, it can help if you want to just number along the bottom of your chart too, if you want to just write those in so you can kind of help keep yourself on track, especially on the setup rows, just to make sure that you have all the stitches in the right place, especially while you're worrying about placing markers. So I'm going to do our center section. I'll make sure that I'm right here in the middle so you guys can see that. All right, so I've completed those. I'm going to place another marker, do that purl 1 for the next section, and then place that final marker, and then knit the last 3 border stitches. And then now that we're ready to work on the wrong side, we're reading the chart in the other direction. And now these first 2 rows, since they're setup rows, We're not working any increases on those. We are just basically establishing our pattern and getting all of our placements right. And then on the next row, we are going to be moving into our lace pattern and our increases. And now this is one thing that can always get a little bit difficult when working with, increases and stitch markers. You just want to kind of make sure that you don't accidentally, put any yarn overs on the wrong side of the marker, or that they don't slip over the marker, because then it'll end up confusing you a little bit. But I'll show you, because there are several spots in this pattern where we move from purling to a yarn over to a knit, which kind of places our yarn in a little bit of odd positions, and sometimes that can make it a little bit difficult to ensure that you aren't adding extra yarn overs. So I'm going to be doing that on the next row. We have a couple of those transitions, so I'll be able to show you what that looks like. So we are ready to start our first row with increases. So this is row 3. And throughout the pattern, you are always going to have these stitches on each edge. These edge stitches are border stitches that are going to remain in stockinette stitch. You can see they're the same every row. On the right side, you're knitting them. On the wrong side, you're purling them. And this is just that border. Everything kind of happens in between those stitches. So at this point, we are ready to start our increases, and this shawl increases by 4 stitches on every right side row, and that's what creates that triangular shape. So we're going to yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and we're going to slip this marker. Now, so this is where I'm going to move these so we don't have any background behind us, so hopefully you can see it a little better. So you can see I have a yarn over on this side of the marker, but my next stitch is a purl stitch. So what I want to do is wrap that around again so we can bring it to the front, but I want to make sure that it doesn't end up on the other side of that marker. That is why we did originally write this pattern without stitch markers, because it can kind of, get a little intense keeping all of that straight, but at the same time, having those markers are almost kind of like for me, they're a little bit like training wheels. They make sure I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. I know where I'm at in the pattern, because I do just personally have a tendency to kind of get in my little groove and stop paying attention to what I'm doing. So the markers act a little bit as a, hey, pay attention to what you're doing at this point, or you need to do something. You're transitioning from another area at this point. So now that I've brought that yarn to the front, I'm going to purl the next stitch, and then I'm bringing that yarn to the back. So our next stitch is a decrease. We're doing a slip, slip, knit. And normally there are a couple ways you could do this. Traditionally, you would slip both stitches knitwise and then insert that needle and then knit them together through the back loop. Another way to do it, I'm gonna pop them back and reorient them, because that's the slipping them both knitwise creates a twist in the stitch, which helps you create that left leaning decrease. Another way to do it without having to slip both, you can insert one through the front, and I'm going to see if I can get a little closer to the camera so you can see that better. I'm inserting through the first, and then I'm going into the back of the second and then knitting them together. And that creates the exact same thing as a slip slip knit. It's just a different method of doing it. So
Okay, we have quite a few questions from the last few things you've said.
yeah.
So the first one says, is a written pattern available? On that document that I've included in chat, are the written instructions in there as well?
No, at this time, this is a chart only pattern, but we can, especially, you know, get up at a later date a written version as well. This was created as a chart only pattern, but it is no problem for us to also create a written pattern.
Okay. And then the next question, someone asked, I think you answered this, I just wanted to be clear. Is the border stitch a knit stitch?
Yeah. So I'm going to show you here. The border stitch, it's knit on the right side and then purled on the wrong side. So that creates stockinette stitch. Here, I'll pull over the shawls so you guys can see that a little better. So that's this edge, and you can see how it's kind of curling, just like your regular stockinette stitch does. You've got 3 stitches that are knit on the right side, but when you flip it over, they're purled on the wrong side. So that creates a nice stretchy, but also rolled edge. So it looks really pretty when worn. And that's how, with this chart, when you see just the solid, basically blank white stitches, those are always going to be stockinette, knit on the right side and purled on the wrong side. And then when you see here where it's purl dots on both the right and the wrong side, that creates what we call reverse stockinette stitch, which is purled on the right side and knit on the wrong side. And that's what creates these rows here in the pattern. And then that little bit of waviness is created by the directional increases and decreases in the pattern.
That's perfect. The next question was, are the grayed out boxes knit stitches?
No, they are no stitches.
I got you.
That means when you see this box that's gray, you ignore it. You pretend it's not there. Because what is happening, they're placeholders. So they are holding space for, as we continue to increase the shawl and it gets wider, they're there. So basically so that the chart can stay a nice rectangle. And so we know that eventually stitches are going to be added. You'll also see them sometimes in some charts used with certain increases, like a knit front and back, because they're there when you're creating something from nothing, basically. So yarn overs don't use a stitch. You literally just wrap the yarn around the needle. So they don't need anything else, but a knit front and back requires a knit stitch and it suddenly goes to 2. So that's also sometimes why you will see a no stitch in a chart pattern. And basically it just means, you know, just skip me, pretend I'm not here, just keep on doing what you're doing, you know, just only do the operations in the next box, basically. So
okay, I think I'll let a few more questions come through.
Sure.
And let you work a little bit. I think that as you're doing it, people will see how it's going to work out.
Sure. And if you guys have like a bunch of, you know, questions, feel free to ask them. We will try to get to as many as we can in the time we have. But also remember, we will be re-airing this. So you're going to be able to, I believe it's Monday, be able to get this class, you know, pause it, you know, rewind it, rewatch it as many times as you want until you get sick of me. So, all right. So at this point, we are now in the middle section of row 3. So I have just completed this section right here. So I did the yarn over and then the knit 2. So I had these O's are yarn overs. And then again, those white boxes are just your knit stitches. And so now I've come to a knit 2 together. And this is basically just the opposite of our slip knit. It just is a right leaning decrease. So the reason we use different ones is because it helps create those shapes. So if you look at these leaves that we're making here, the ones going this way are all slip knits because they're all left leaning. And this side, these are all knit 2 togethers because they're right leaning. So they create those for you. So knit 2 together, you just insert into the 2 stitches and then knit them together. And now we're back to one of those where we're moving from, we've got this purl stitch, because you can see after we have that knit two together, which is basically that right slatch, we have our purl dot, and then next we are moving to a yarn over. So we don't actually have to do anything because our yarn was in front from the purl. So we're going to leave it in front, but knit the next stitch, because that in one step will create our yarn over instead of moving the yarn to the back, making a yarn over, and then knitting the stitch. And then here I'm just working another yarn over, because we are at this section of row 3 where you've got a yarn over, knit 1, and yarn over. So I've done that second yarn over, and then we're back to our other border stitches. So we are just going to be knitting those 3, and then now we are back ready to move to the wrong side again. And again, we are moving right side rows, or our odd rows that we are working from right to left. And our wrong side rows are our even numbers, which are worked from left to right. And with right side and wrong side, it's basically just, which side you're going to be showing to people, which side the patterning looks best on. So as you can see, this is the right side, and then this is our wrong side. I mean, technically you could wear it any way you want, but it looks a lot better from the right side. The patterning shows better and more clearly as well, especially in the stockinette with our reverse stockinette ridges worked there. So the nice thing about wrong side rows is they're basically your relaxation rows. You can just, you're not having to worry about doing any increases or decreases on those. In this pattern, you're just going to be maintaining now this reverse stockinette edge that you could see running up both sides. So that's the only thing. And that's, again, why for me personally, I like to use the stitch markers to act basically as little bumpers. So I know when I'm coming up to something that I need to pay attention to. I'll remember that when I get to that central section, I'll have to work those in that reverse stockinette, which means on the wrong side, I am going to have to knit those stitches instead of purling them. So as you can see, I moved that over and I've got one knit stitch here for that reverse stockinette column. And then after this, I'm going to show you, I'm going to kind of jump ahead so we can get to the next section so I can talk to you a little bit about pattern repeats. Because this, like I said earlier, this pattern has the chart B is repeatable. And that means you can just keep working it over and over again without having to worry about having the right number of stitches. It's made so every repeat of the chart adds the perfect amount of stitches for you to be able to start it over at the beginning again. So this row, we are just finishing it up. And since this is the wrong side row, like I said, no increases or decreases. We're just maintaining the pattern. So for a wrong side row, that means most of them are going to be purl, but we do have those 2 stitches that we are going to knit to maintain that reverse stockinette column. And then I'm going to pop this aside so I can show you what it looks like once you have completed that first chart. So you go from something little and scrappy like this humble little piece, and then once you have completed chart A, this is what it's going to look like. And you can see when you look at a chart, it basically mirrors how your knitting is going to look from the right side. So you could see where you have these decreases that follow around, that's our center leaf right here. Same here where you have this, I like to call it, it's a kite pattern. It always reminds me of kites, but you end up with this central line of decreases with these yarn overs working right into the center. But I'm going to show you on chart B because that's what it looks like once this section is complete. You'll see once we get to this chart, see, and you'll have it in front of you as well, but I'll try to get a little closer. You have these red boxes around this section of the chart. What that means, as you're working additional repeats of chart B, you will be working this section as needed until you get to the last stitch here. So on this one, I want to make sure I get all of this in before we run out of time. But this section, just after the first one, on the second repeat, you'll work this repeat twice. On the third repeat of this chart, you work this 3 times. And I know that can be a little intense. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. But I'm going to show you right now how we transition to working our chart B. Because this one does have a little bit more decreasing, and this one has our central double decrease in it as well. So I'm going to show you how to work that. Get my everything right. Now that I'm switching needles. So we are maintaining our border stitches just like we did previously. And we are, again, our yarn over, and now we're going to be into this repeat section. So I am going to knit 1, yarn over, and then I'm going to knit 6 stitches. And now that I've done that, I'm ready to work my central decrease. Now this one, you will slip 2 stitches together knitwise. Oops, pop that guy back on the needle. So what that means, unlike the slip, slip, knit, where you do 1 at a time, this one, you do 2 at a time. And then you knit 1 stitch, and now we're going to take those 2 stitches that we just slipped and pass them back over. So what that does is creates a central decrease, and unlike the slip, slip, knit or the knit 2 together, this one does not lean in any direction. It stays central. That's why it's called a central double decrease. So I'm going to actually undo that so you guys can see that again, because it is a little tricky the first time you try it, especially because you were not working them first. So we have all our stitches back on our needle. And I'll see if I can make sure that this is not in the background causing any issues. We're going to take our next 2 stitches, slip them together knitwise. So we're entering both knitwise. We're knitting the next stitch, and then we're going to take those 2 slip stitches, and same thing, we're inserting our left hand needle into both of them and slipping them over. So that's also decreasing by 2 stitches instead of 1 stitch, like a knit 2 together or a slip, slip, knit. And then for the remainder of this section, we're just going to be knitting 6, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to yarn over, knit 1, we're going to do another yarn over, and we're back at that point where we're transitioning from yarn overs to purls. So I'm just going to wrap it around again so I can get it into the proper position for that purl stitch. I'm going to purl, and then my yarn a little tangled up here. We are going to work that slip, slip, knit. So like I said, you can do it the traditional way, which is slip them both and then insert and then knit them together. And then we are knitting 2, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2 together, purl, and then this is that one where we're transitioning from that purl to a yarn over, so we don't have to worry about bringing it back around, because by knitting the next stitch, we're creating that yarn over anyway, which is kind of, I know it used to happen to me a lot when I first learned to knit. When I was doing knit 1, purl 1, rib, I would end up with a lot of yarn overs instead of rib, because I was just not moving the yarn back to the position. But this is one time where that actually works in your favor. It saves you a little bit of effort and motion. But we are back to this point where we are on the second portion of the chart. So we're working it the same as we did the first. We're knitting 6, doing that central double decrease, and then knitting 6 more. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then back to this, where we're going to slip the 2 stitches together knitwise. We're going to knit 1, and then we're going to pass both of those stitches, if I can get them, both of those stitches back over.
Tori, we are about 7 minutes out.
All right, perfect. So if you guys have any questions that you want me to answer for you, I'm also going to, after this row, I'm going to break out really quick and show you what you'll look like after your first repeat of chart B. And I'm going to talk a little bit about blocking your shawl once it's done.
We did have quite a few questions about the charts and how many times to use chart A versus using chart B.
Chart A is the setup chart, so you are only going to use that once. So once you do chart A, you're done with it. You don't need to look at it again. For the size given in our pattern, which is the depth of the triangle, so from the neck down your back is 25 inches, and the width or wingspan is 72.5 inches. That in the pattern, you work chart B for a total of 10 times. But as I said, chart B is one of those. You could work it once. I mean, granted, if you just want a small pretty piece like this is chart A once and chart B once. So after this point, you just keep working chart B, and what ends up happening is this little section here that's in your red box continues to get repeated additional times each time you work that chart. So you can see here, that's your first one. Your second repeat, you've got 2. Your third repeat, 3, and it just keeps growing like that. So that is how your shawl grows into that triangular shape. And that's why instead of, you know, this pattern ending up bigger and bigger, we can just do this once. And by having that little red box around it, you know, you just keep working this section until you're down to that last stitch where you knit and then yarn over for that. And then I think that answered that. So let me know if there are any others. I don't want to miss anyone if they've got any pressing questions.
Definitely people overall seem to think that it's such a beautiful shawl. And also I just want to remind people that if they're looking for more basic tips or tricks, to check out the other yarn classes that we've done online at michaels.com/classes. And also people overall just want to see the finished product. So, but you said you were going to get to that. So
yeah, I have the whole thing right here. So I'll try to pop everything out of the way without knocking my camera down. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, we've got 5 minutes. So I'll tell you, once you have completed your shawl, this is what you end up with. So this is down the center. So this is, you know, the whole length of my arm. And when you get to this point, when you're on your last row, you want to remember to bind off loosely, I recommend either, and there are tons of videos on this on the internet, either a lace bind off or, you know, your regular bind off, but use a needle 2 sizes larger for something like this. I'd recommend like a size 10, because that's going to make sure that you have some give on this edge. So when you block it, because we do say in the pattern to block firmly. And what that means is if you're gonna, you can wash it or steam it. I'm a big fan of steaming when I'm feeling lazy, because I can just lay it out and hit it with some steam and we're good. Washing it, of course, is also nice because you've had your hands all over it for however long you've been working on it. So sometimes it's nice to start fresh and have a nice clean shawl. But once you're done and you're ready to block, you're going to want to either wash it, and when it's wet, but you're going to want to roll it up in like a towel and press that water out. You don't want to wring the shawl itself, but just kind of, you know, press some of the water out after you wash it and then roll it up. I like to do it in a couple beach towels, roll it up, and then I step on it, get as much water out as I can, and then I'll lay it flat. You can use blocking mats, or even those mats that you use in like kids' nurseries, those like foam mats that have a little bit of texture to them. That helps them dry faster. Then you want to lay it out, spread it out, because that's what's going to open up this lace and make it look really stunning. And you can either just lay it flat. If that's good enough for you, that is fine. But you can also take your tapestry needle, and you could take some of your leftover yarn from your project or any smooth yarn that you've got. Even crochet thread works really great. Thread it onto your tapestry needle, and then along the edges, I like to do it both along the top edge and along the 2 bottom edges of the triangle. Take that smooth yarn and thread it through. Like you could just thread it through the bound off edge like this. I'm going to try to get it up here. Hopefully you can see that. Kind of thread it right under, like you could see the V's from our bind off. Thread them under there and then keep going. So you'll have the yarn threaded through that. And then you can pull this nice and taut and let it dry like that. And it's kind of like doing a wet set on your hair. It's going to remember that position that it dried in. So that's going to keep your lace nice and open, keep it in shape. And it'll hold a block for quite a long time unless you're wearing it out in the rain, and that's going to kind of ruin the memory of the yarn a little bit. But that's what's going to, you know, really open up your lace on your shawl and make it look great. But I think we've got like a minute left, so if anyone has anything else they want to know, I'd be happy to answer. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming by and knitting with me today.
Yeah, if after the class people have questions, where can they reach out to you?
You can catch us. We are Premier Yarns, both on Instagram and on Facebook, and our website is also premieryarns.com. So you can see us, and we also, of course, have our yarns in Michael's stores as well. So you can find us all those places, and we will keep an eye out for any questions you have. And we'll also be working on adding some written instructions to this pattern. So those of you who aren't quite comfortable with chart reading yet can kind of have a comparison. So you can look at the written instructions and then look at the chart, because that's also a really good way to learn chart reading for those of you who are new to it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tori, and thank you everyone in chat for participating. We're getting lots of thank yous in chat. Learned a lot. Great for learning the chart. They really appreciate you, Tori. We all had a great time today. Thank you guys so much. And remember, you can catch this class again on Monday at michaels.com/classes and on our official YouTube channel. Alrighty, thank you everyone.
Thanks so much.